Good morning. Today is November the 3rd. It's November, which means it's Thanksgiving month, which is the best holiday. Well, it's really up there, top 3. And that is coming at the end of this month. And so very, very exciting. And not to toot our own but not to toot our own horn. This episode is also very exciting because we're talking about Ferraris today. Ferrari Rochers. We're talking about materialism and the Christian, and a little bit of a Q&A and a little bit of current event. There's a little sprinkle of each in there that we're talking about this morning. Sit back, relax. You're listening to the Dear Church Podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church Podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang, and we have with us Pastor Eugene and Chunsuk and Brian today, and we are recording an episode regarding materialism. Last week we talked about busyness, and then everyone approached me and they said, "Oh, so you think you're busy or something?" But this is not about me. This is about the people. So I don't know what everyone is.
People know.
Talking about.
They know.
Well, today we're talking about materialism, and I thought we could approach this topic in a couple different ways. I think, materialism by definition is a tendency to consider material possessions and physical comfort as more important than spiritual ones. This is literally from Google. This is a secular worldly definition of materialism. But today we use this term to mean something a little bit different. It's a little nuanced. We perhaps love too much the pleasures of the world. It can honestly take a judgmental nuance where people, if they have nice things or if someone talks highly of material goods, someone might say, "Oh, he or she's so materialistic." They drive a Ferrari. Ugh, so materialistic. I drive a Ford. Or they only have designer things. Ugh, they're so materialistic. I only have one or two.
Didn't Billie Eilish come out yesterday from our recording? We're recording on Halloween or Reformation Day.
Yes.
Didn't she come out yesterday and say, billionaires need to give up their money? But she's a millionaire, so she doesn't fit in that category.
Oh. That's smart.
That's smart. Yeah.
Who would they give them? Who would they give the money to?
It's the same thing, People who drive Ferraris. You could say that because you don't have a Ferrari.
Yeah, if you drove a Ferrari, you could have bought a Ford and given that money to everybody else.
There
that
you go.
Kind of
all right,
attitude.
end of episode. Let's talk about what's really important.
What is it?
After the Halloween episode, I saw you dress your kid up.
That's not true. People are going to rage because... Wait, but first of all, I didn't even say anything. I didn't say that.
Say what?
I didn't say anything anyway. Now I'm getting off topic. Just I have to lock in right now. And I think we have a judgmental tinge, if you will, even when we say materialistic. And so I don't know if that's actually true. Just because someone has something or owns something doesn't necessarily mean that they would consider their possessions more highly than anything else. But just by appearance, people use the term materialistic. And I think because we live in a social media-driven world, we live in a culture of covetousness, oftentimes mispronounced covetousness. And I wanted to address the topic of materialism from both angles, I think. First, from the side of someone who is materialistic, is there something wrong with that? Then on the other side, people who see others have things that they don't have, wagging their finger and saying, no, they're so materialistic. Meanwhile, making assumptions or perhaps even being covetous of their neighbor's possessions. So I think both are temptations that can befall believers. And so we should talk about both aspects of this topic, I think. And so the sin of prioritizing worldly pleasures and possessions over spiritual eternal ones, and then judging others based on assumptions and covetousness. So I think today's episode is twofold. Unless there's a threefold that you're considering. So I thought to start us off on this journey this morning, I'd read for us Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to 20. It reads in the ESV, Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. What does it mean to store up treasures in heaven? And is that pointing to the fact that we should not be storing treasures up here? Like, how does this have to do with materialism, consumerism, the culture that demands us to buy more, better, the newest iPhone and whatnot? How do we, like, what is this text talking about?
I think Jesus is getting right to the crux of it when he says that. And so I guess we could start from the beginning, or we could start with, I don't know, maybe a little John Calvin.
Oh, I like that guy.
You do?
Jean Calvin, as he was known.
Yeah. Didn't he say that? Wait, I need to look it up. He wrote, riches do not in their own nature hinder us from following God, but in consequence of the depravity of the human mind, it is scarcely possible for those who have so great abundance to avoid being intoxicated by them. So, this is something that we've gone over, but being rich isn't inherently bad.
Right.
However, the same thing what Jesus said, it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
And so when we go into this idea of materialism, you have to start wondering why. Why is that the case? Do we all have to live poor or, dress down, or should we continue to guilt trip people that are above our stations or our socioeconomic statuses, so where we can always chide them? So you make more than me because you drive this class car. You should give your money away.
Yeah.
And then we see the hypocrisy and all that. We see the hypocrisy and all that because I think it comes down to what you mentioned in the beginning about how the word is pronounced incorrectly by some people. Old heads, I think you said. But covetousness is a serious condition that we have to consider. We have to think about that. I think we really do. And this is where Rene Girard really gets into it with his labeling of mimetic desire. And if I could just distill all of that into, or reduce it to just this very short statement, mimetic desire is his teaching that all desire comes from someone else. We don't have desires on our own, so it needs to be taught. So it comes from something else. So we don't have innate desires for things, but those desires come from us watching other people or looking at other people. And so an example that I liked using was, you could have 5 of the exact same blue toy car in a room. Send a kid. Did I say 5?
Yeah.
Send a kid in there, and he's going to play with one of those toy cars, but it's going to be the exact same thing. Send a second kid in there. What's going to happen is eventually they'll want to play with the same blue car. And it's because the desire comes from, the other person. It doesn't come from just ourselves. So a lot of people think that we desire things because just they're innately good. And then you go across cultures, you go across generations, and the desires are different. And their value system is different. The way they look at things are different. So why do you want, I think I could go to even the very basic examples of, why'd you wear a vest today? And I could go down to,
it's cold.
It's mimetic desire. It's because you have this enviousness about you and you have a covetousness about you. This is why you wore a vest. And we could parse that. Like Rene Girard would be able to parse that and kind of take it down. Where, why don't you wear just a basic, blanket over yourself? Or why don't you do something else? Why'd you wear, a stylish vest? Because vests are currently in with a certain, group, right? And you portray a certain vibe about you if you have a vest.
Yeah.
All those things we take into consideration before we put on the vest, do we not? Why did I wear white sneakers today? And why didn't I just wear, some New Balances or something like that, right? Why did I wear white sneakers?
Yeah.
And it could be because, I saw this one interview with Michael Jordan and someone was interviewing, and they had like the whitest sneakers. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And that those things stand out, and so it stood out to me, and it affected the way I dress. And so mimetic desire is a very, very powerful thing. It's a very powerful force that I think people don't give enough credence to. And so why do we do anything at all? Why do we send our kids to the school? Why do we live in this town? Do we celebrate Halloween or not? Do we dress them up or not? Do we do trunk or treat? Do we do any of that stuff? All that stuff, Gerard will boil down to mimetic desire. And I think that's something that we need to consider, because what we'll start to recognize is that when we have a desire, it's not autonomous. We always think it's autonomous, or we think it's spontaneous. Oh, today I feel like a, warm stew or a broth because it's a cold, rainy day or something like that. We think it's just spontaneous or it's autonomous. It's something our body really desires. But, Gerard would say, no. Desire is always brought by a mediator or a model, right? We talked about the model, but it's a mediator. Someone else brings that desire to you. And so because of that model, we have the desires that we have. And it could be external, it could be internal, it could be all these things. External meaning like, you watch a celebrity like Michael Jordan do it, or you could do it internal, like you saw a bunch of your friends that are decently dressed that you respect, they also wear vests. And so you also wear a vest, something like that.
So what you're saying then is that that materialism and covetousness are two sides of the same coin, in that it's based on mimetic desire.
It comes from envy. It comes from covetousness, right?
Both of those things.
Right.
Okay.
So I'll just give you a quote from him. And he said, "Man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he turns to others in order to make up his mind." And so we want to desire. So in a sense, we want to desire something. So you desire, but because we don't know what to desire, we go around. So like this is in the early 2000s. I forget when it was. I went to Europe, and they said, we know who the Americans are because they wear the whitest sneakers. Apparently Europeans at the time didn't wear white sneakers. They always wore colored or dark sneakers. And so here I was with like basically white sneakers walking around.
You had Converse on.
Yeah, they're like, you must be American because you have white sneakers. And so they knew the Americans have this culture. So where did that desire for white sneakers come from? It didn't come from the Europeans because none of them wear white sneakers. No. But in their own culture, in their own subset, right, they have a desire, what they think is good and what is beautiful, what they want to, convey when they talk to other people or socialize and things like that.
So if all of this is rooted in mimetic desire, we can't even escape it.
Exactly. So what he's getting at is all human desire is borrowed. You take it from somewhere. Okay. Your affinity for art, maybe you're like, oh, I love the art. I'm so artistic. I went to Cornell and things like that, right? So if you say, if you like art, right, and you think it's, you're on this really sophisticated higher plane of appreciation of art, you also have to understand that's borrowed. Your appreciation of art is learned and it's borrowed. The taste that you have, the fashion that you have, the art that you appreciate, the career that you're going for, it's all, you could always trace it back to the model. And we could go back to some of the basic stuff like, I think we talked about it on this podcast, but when, we're second generation immigrants or something, we could say that. So when when our parents or our grandparents came, what did they do for a living? And there was a saying, whoever picked you up from the airport, you did their job. Mm-hmm. So, what was funny? I asked my father-in-law who picked him up from the airport, and it was a jeweler. So that's funny because he's a jeweler, right? And so that's quite interesting. So, if some grocery owner or laundromat owner or dry cleaner owner, they come and pick you up, you probably will be in that, field of business when you're here. It's what you know. People could be like, "Oh, no, 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 no. It's not desire. It's convenience. It's networking. It's connection." But all the forms of this, what propels culture, the engine of culture, comes from desire. Comes from having a model that you can start to say, "Oh, actually, I want this. I have this desire," and so. Mimetic desire is a real thing that we should look out for. It's something that we should check ourselves in every step of the way. Why do I want to wear, really, even for guys, why did you wear the pair of pants that you wore? It's from mimetic desire. It's not simply utilitarian. And even if it was utilitarian, like pure utilitarian, like bare bones utilitarian, that also, we could argue, is from mimetic desire.
So I guess the question is, because the way that you're kind of breaking it down right now, you're kind of making it all the same thing in the sense of like covetousness that we discussed, materialism that we discussed. It's all really the same thing. You just want more and more and more and more. And it seems like that's kind of the key theme that's running through both of those things. And so I guess as a Christian then, we know that we are to be content. We know that we're to be content with what God has given us. So in mimetic desire, you want more, you want better, you want newer, you want flashier, whatever it is. Then can a Christian ever want more? Like, do I have to have an iPhone 10 for the rest of my life? Can I ever want the 17? Like, can Christians want earthly things, and can they possess newer things? Or, if you can, where is the line? If you can't, why not?
Yeah, so I think the way we tackle the issue that you brought up is we need to talk, and we need to actually admit that we all have this mimetic desire. We all have covetousness to a degree. We have this greed that we're fighting. We're all sinners by nature, and we have to battle it. And battling it means we need to understand what we're battling, right? So just thinking like, well, this is no big deal. It's not a big deal if I own a Ferrari or have a big house. That's not the point. The point isn't that in itself is a big deal. The point is, what was the desire behind it? And if we start to think about it and talk about it, we get to the root of it, meaning you get to see what you are actually battling. That would be a good first step, in my opinion. And so, if you have this like desire that you don't really understand either to collecting, let's say, Jordans. I heard of someone that collected like to collect pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
And she had collected over 1,200 pairs of shoes over a lifetime. Wow. Collected. Like it's
not wearing.
No, just wearing it, but it's in her possession. Okay, and then she passed. And people were like, what a waste. What a waste of money. You could have, how much money you could have saved or used to help your children. It would have been passed down. But then if you think about it, if she had more time and her house was a little bigger, she had more room, for storage, that desire would have led to a near infinite amount of shoes, right? If she kept on collecting and collecting and collecting. And so we point at those people who are able to collect a lot in their short time, but we don't point a pink finger at us, saying like, I only have like 10 pairs of shoes. But then if time went on, would those pairs of shoes grow? Because it's not just simply about the number, it's the desire. And so because you have the desire, you need to check out your heart and say, okay, so if this is the deceitfulness of the world, the deceitfulness of materialism, the deceitfulness of the things that are going to pass, then I need to check that in my heart and say, look, I actually have this. And then I think you need to go on to the next step, which I don't think a lot of people do. If I have this and I don't fight it, it becomes my core. It becomes a part of me, it becomes who I am, how I respond. I'll give you an example that could sound a little trite, but it's just like a run-of-the-mill everyday example that I could, or everyday experience as an example I'd like to give. Let's say you don't like Chunseok that much. You don't like him that much. And then, but you have to talk to him. He's like your coworker, someone you just have to deal with. And so usually when he talks to you and says, Sam, what do you think about this for the youth group? You kind of dismiss him and just like, whatever, dude. I'm
Yeah.
like, just do what you want.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, leave me alone kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, that day was a little different because that day you knew that the PlayStation 6 was going to be delivered to your house. And so that's on your mind.
Okay.
And because the PlayStation 6 they don't have one yet, right?
No.
Because that's going to be delivered to your house.
Yeah.
You're in a little bit, you're in a better mood.
I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. So when you look at him, you don't hate him as much because you look at him, but you don't really see him all just Junseok. You see on like a little, sub screen on the bottom right of your mind,
Right.
the PS6, right? And so you respond a little better. You're like, you know what? That's not a bad idea, Junseok. Why don't you go for it? Instead of saying, whatever, that kind
Yeah.
of
Okay.
So our desires affect even our everyday interactions is my point. What we don't realize is that those desires that can be the things that are truly deceitful, that are going to really destroy us one day.
So we have gone from materialistic covetousness to desire, but the way that you're kind of answering, it makes me think, well, isn't this just really ultimately a desire for happiness? Isn't it just to be happy? I want this Ferrari because this will make me happy. I want this pair of shoes because it'll make me happy. And so then for a Christian to think about this, right? Because you're talking about the heart, right? So you're not talking about whether you have a big house or whether you have a nice car or whatever. It's really, where's your heart at? What's the intention behind it? That's what you're talking about, right? The heart. But then is that a bad heart though? To want to desire something, to want to be happy. And it reminded me of Ecclesiastes chapter 9. And I think a lot of times Christians always think, you know what? I know I'm supposed to be happy in Christ, and that's supposed to be my ultimate joy, and everything else should pale in comparison to that. And so this Ferrari shouldn't make me happy. Having 1,000 pair of shoes shouldn't make me happy because it's Christ that makes me happy. And so I know that a lot of Christians focus on that, but it's interesting because in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 7 to 10, it reads, "Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Let your garments be always white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love, all the days of your vain life that he has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun." So where are we then? Like, are Christians to enjoy life, or are Christians to just simply look forward to the eternal heavenly kingdom, and so we don't enjoy life? Like you know what I mean? Like, can I not buy those shoes because I know it's not my ultimate purpose? Like, where do we land on this?
Yeah, I think if once we recognize that we are creatures of desire, that we desire things by nature, then we need to start pointing to what we actually can desire. What is good to desire?
Right, that's the question. Yeah.
And so, 1 Timothy 6 gives us a really good insight into what we should desire.
1 Timothy 6:9?
6, sure, 9 is part of it, but 6 to 10.
Okay, because that's what I had written down here. This is 1 Timothy 6 to 10. "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction.
10.
For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and have pierced themselves with many pangs."
Right. So when you desire money, when you desire, physical material things, it's going to kill you. It just will, because it's not lasting. You're putting what is supposed to be put into the eternal into something that is temporal. I think putting things rightly, the desires rightly, is a good thing. But when our desires become, maladjusted, that's when we go through a lot of pains in life, or pangs. And the first thing that you read was Paul was telling Timothy, it's godliness. Godliness with contentment is great gain. That's what we should go for. And so if we are to desire something, it should be godly. We could do one more.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
So this is great. But I think the question is, people don't associate godliness and money in the same thought. People think I could want to have godly character. I could want to be more like Christ. At the same time, I'm not going to say no to my promotion because I shouldn't desire money. I'm going to say yes to my promotion. I'm going to say yes to the salary bump because why wouldn't I do that? I'm going to try to get the salary bump. I'm going to try to get the raise. I'm going to try to do all these things because it's good for me to have more money. But does that mean that I love money? Does that mean that I desire money? And if so, does that mean that I should say no to the promotion? Like, or are those two tied together? Because it seems kind of almost dumb. Like, why would I say no to money? That, like I could be godly and want the promotion at the same time, no?
Yeah. And so we can go to that specific example, or we could go, well, let's hit that a little bit later. Let's go to Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 and 9. And 10 to 13 is the big one, because 13 is I can do all things.
Yes.
And so 10 to 13, I think people know, but it's about contentment. It's about contentment in all things. But 8 through 9 is something that we have talked about at length in this podcast, but I think we could go back to it.
Sure. I'll read 8 to 13 then.
8, okay.
Or you want me to just do 8 and 9?
Sure.
Okay. This is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 to 9. It reads, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." We read this text a lot in this podcast.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's another dimension. Remember we talked about mimetic desire has a model, has something that you need to look to, right? He's pointing to himself as the model, saying, look at me. Whatever you have received, learned, and heard and seen in me, that's what you should practice. And and then you have to go back to verse 8. And verse 8 is what is, true, beautiful, and good, right? What is good, true, and beautiful is verse 8. Verse 9 is look at what I did.
Yeah.
And so here's the model. And, in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, it says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Because Christ is the ultimate model. So you can say Christ is the ultimate model, but then it's also portrayed in his disciples, his apostles. And so you have to follow them in what they desired. And so when you look at them, now we're not left alone. We're not left alone or left with just worldly people as models, because without a model, we don't know what to desire. We'll just follow the models that are presented to us. So here's a better model. Here's a better way. Here's someone that you can actually imitate, and the desires that they have won't fall from greed, covetousness, envy, or this malcontent, but it'll be good. It'll be true. It'll be beautiful. And, this is why I really love these verses. It's something that I could go back to again and again. And so in the end, you need to model yourself after them. You need to make sure that you follow their example, imitate them. So because we are creatures of mimetic desire, that means we should imitate, or we must imitate somebody. Here is someone to imitate. And so Paul is saying, it's me. Imitate me, Timothy, or imitate me to the church of Philippi. And when he is saying that, I think we should take that very seriously, because when you do that, you'll see a whole generation changed. Think about the Puritans and what they, submitted, or what they really contributed to the world. And I think it's actually a pretty amazing thing when you actually do follow. There is life-giving, not just simply life-altering results that happen.
But how is this still connected to how I spend my money, though? Because I could be like Paul, right? And still spend my money however I want. No? How is it connected?
It goes back to, what we should talk about. We should talk about what is true, what is good, what is beautiful. We should have discussions on that. We should think about those things. And when you do those things, then your actions will start to reflect that. I think when we don't do that, it becomes a matter of what's the minimum that I could do so I can do this other thing. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying.
So okay.
the I see. Okay.
You have to forgive my language, but the problem, quote unquote, problem of tithing is that people think that once they tithe, they could do whatever they want with the other 90%. This is a false reality that you have put yourself into. Just because you give 10% doesn't mean you can do whatever you want with the 90% that you have. And so 100% belongs to God. 100% God has given you to steward. 10% you go give back for the labor of his, ministers, pastors, and, the church and whatnot. But what people will naturally do is they can start off with maybe 10%, but we saw people go above and beyond 10% in their giving to the church. However, whatever you're spending, it should be for the glory of God. But that's only by when you start to think about it. You start to think, what is most glorifying to God? How can I please him? Because when I please him, when I glorify God, actually I am fulfilled. I am satisfied. I actually feel good. Like it's a lasting, goodness that I feel because this is what I was meant to do. But when I don't do that, and I think, oh, what's the minimum I could do? Everything is like, oh, I wish I had a little more. If I had a little more, I could do this. Everything becomes, oh, if I only had a little more time, if I had a little more money, if I had a little more of this, and then lo and behold, you have become materialistic because you believe that with a little more, you could find a little more satisfaction. With a little more, there will be a little more happiness, which is false. This is a lie. This is not true.
I think that's really helpful because oftentimes people just look at the items or people just look at someone's lifestyle, which are the fruit of what they believe or the fruit of their core, right? What they really desire. And they just make judgments based off of that. But I think a lot of times people, when they think about the next thing they're going to purchase, right? Like, oh, I'm going to get this new iPhone 17, whatever it is. And I'm only saying this because I do need an upgrade now. But, you could say, I want this iPhone 17. But the first question isn't, how am I going to glorify God more with this item? But the question is always, can I afford it? Right? That's the first question.
Yeah, because, it's time for an upgrade or I deserve it.
So,
whatever it is.
So where does that come in though? Because I still think that sometimes people have a difficulty connecting the two, where they're connecting the godly character at the same time. Something so small like an iPhone, like in the grand scheme of things, like an iPhone 17 upgrade from 12 is so small. Like that doesn't have anything to do with my character. It doesn't have anything to do with my godliness. Like how does that connect?
I don't think it does. I don't think these things really in itself is anything bad. Just like owning a Ferrari in itself isn't bad. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about we need to go back to the vainness of our desires.
Yeah.
And how everything is vanity. You know how the teacher goes, everything is vanity, 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 right? Mm. Everything is meaningless. And so when we put eternal worth on things that are meaningless, that is a great crime. That's a sin. We can't do that. So it's not about getting the iPhone 17. It's about how much worth you put in the iPhone 17, into getting the iPhone 17, how the iPhone 17 makes you feel. It shouldn't make you feel as good as it's making you feel right now, just thinking about it. Like, that's the check that we need to have, the desire. Because you want to continue to think about what is good, true, and beautiful, then what should get me going?
Yeah.
What should get me that excitement and that desire?
Yeah.
So, shall I give you some examples then? What about worshiping with the saints on Sunday? Isn't that a glorious thing that we have been called to do? Does that get you excited? Does that get you going? What about when I get to help out a brother in need or a sister in need? What about if I get to encourage them? What if I get to stir them up to love and good works? Does that get you excited? Thinking about that. When I'm doing my normal everyday activities, like I'm washing the dishes, what gets me going,
Right.
Because that might not, in all honesty, maybe that's not what you think about. That's why you check your heart and you need to readjust those desires. Because if you don't readjust or reprioritize your desires, it could easily go by the wayside. And then what you end up doing is most of your time you're thinking about things that are vain. Most of the time you're not thinking about God. You're not thinking about the church. You're not thinking about things that are eternal like His Word. But then you're starting to think about things that are going to expire. Like, you know how fast the iPhone 17 is going to expire? It's going to expire in just a few years.
Yeah, probably.
In just a few years, it's gone. It's useless. It's
Yeah.
worthless. The next update, the iOS update, it's done. It's a brick, that kind of thing. And so we put so much weight on that. And then when someone else has, it's like, wow, that's such a nice object that you have. But when someone has the characteristics of godliness, no one goes, wow, that's such a great characteristic you have. You're so wise for your age, or wow, you live really the life that you have been called to live. What a generous person you are. Like, those aren't the qualities that make us go wow anymore. It's all these envious things that, we want. Maybe in the end we actually hate them. Maybe we hate the rich. We hate the billionaire class. And because of them, I can't be a billionaire. I mean, I got news for you, buddy. Even if the billionaires weren't billionaires, I don't think you'd be one.
You know what I find to be really interesting is everyone wants more money, but they hate the one that has a lot of money. It's really interesting because I think there's conflicting views where it's like, you want the raise, you want this, you want that, you want this item, you want that item, you want as much money as you need to be comfortable. But then we look at billionaires and be like, those dudes are not good dudes. They should be giving their money to the poor. They should be doing this. And so it's not even money at that point. It's just straight discontentment.
Well, that's the engine of culture that I mentioned before. You have this engine of culture inside of, let's say, the United States. What's eventually going to happen is going to lead to our destruction, because you're never happy for anyone else. You feel like, let's say you make $60K a year, which is a good modest amount in the area. You make $60K a year, and you think to yourself, if only I had 70, I'd be okay. And I think we went over this. You won't be. Honestly, you won't be. No, I will. You don't understand. I'm just always a little shy on every month because, in the end I could say, well, you're not living within your means, and then you'll get all mad. How come he gets to live like that? How come this person gets to live like that? How come this person gets to have a nicer house than me? And so in the end, you're always like, if I only had this much, I would be happier. But in the end, what you're really saying is, I really hate those people that make more than me because they don't deserve to make more than me. I deserve it more than them. I should be the one with the bigger house, with the bigger car, and whatnot. And so that mimetic desire is going to destroy not just you, but it's going to destroy society. We need to make sure that we recognize that when Christ leads us to his understanding in his word about what is true, what is good, what is beautiful, and we desire the things that God does, like we prioritize correctly, then society becomes ordered. It becomes beautiful. It becomes a show of truth, right? And so, people are like, well, is food good or bad? Is an iPhone 17 good or bad? Like, they're nothing. They're just items. It's us putting the weight that is either good or bad. Food in itself isn't good or bad. It could be great, but it could also be bad. There's gluttony, right? So if you put too much desire on the food, it's gluttonous. And this is something that, I have found that over time, as your flesh deteriorates, as you become older, it's easier to battle, I suppose. There's some things that are easier. Like when you're young, like in your 20s and 30s, maybe in your 40s, you always want that nice omakase or that sushi, like buffet, or that nice, perfectly seared, medium rare steak or something like that. Like that stuff gets you going. I do believe if you continue to consider what is true, good, and beautiful, desires for those things will start to alleviate, and it will be placed where it should be. The sushi buffet, to be honest, not that great. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've never had a sushi buffet that was good. I've never had a sushi platter that was good. When they bring those like huge sushi platters that you can buy,
the little dragon boat.
People used to love them. When they first came out, I was a younger man. When they first started to serve that, it was like, wow, you ordered this. This is crazy.
Got a little uni on there.
They put it on a little boat with like three tiers.
Oh yeah.
It didn't taste that great. I'm gonna be honest. It was okay. I mean, I had sushi at Tsukiji in Japan. It was pretty good. It was actually one of the best, to be honest. And nothing here really compares. Maybe that's what it is, but that's what it is. Like, once you've had something that is greater. You're like, all this other stuff, it's okay. It's okay. What's more important? What's more important than having sushi like it is in Tsukiji, Japan? I think what's more important is who you eat it with. I think it's more important to not stuff your face with as much sushi as you can or steak as you can, or whatever it is, but it's to encourage each other while you break bread. I think that's better. I think the food tastes better. I talked about how getting a double quarter pounder with cheese deluxe with Big Mac sauce is probably one of my favorite fast food burgers. It's great, but there's only so much you could do just eating it by yourself, unless you really are, steep into the sin of gluttony. But after a while, it's like, why would I get that by myself? That's a weird thing to get by myself. But if I get it and I share it with you, and then you call me, you're like, huge, I ate this and it was so good, and even my wife loved it, which was an actual phone call that we had with the.
It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then was it a text exchange or something like that?
Something like that.
And
I may have
so
called
sharing that. Yeah, I think you may have called me. Sharing that brings me joy, brings me more satisfaction than the actual thing itself, because in the end, who knows? We might all get bitten by that tick that causes an allergic reaction to red meat. And none of us will be able to enjoy.
We need to destroy that tick immediately.
Double quarter pounder with cheese deluxe with Big Mac sauce.
So what you're saying then is the importance isn't necessarily what you're buying when you're buying it. The importance is at the highest priority is, where is your heart? What is most important to you? What is your personal highest priority? That's what we have to consider and think about and reflect on as we think about even our purchases, right?
Yeah, on this Reformation Day when we're recording, which is October 31st, Martin Luther talked about the freedom of the will, and it's about how Christians are the truly free ones. Because it's not about, do you have a Ferrari or not? I don't think it really is. I think to the Christian then, it's about, if I do this, it's glorifying to God, and I'm really, really happy about it. And so, it's not about asking the question, is there ever an instance when it's okay to purchase a Ferrari?
Right.
I don't think people, if true Christians were in community together, I don't think anybody would care, because maybe someone will buy a Ferrari, and the first thing they'll say is, yo, you should drive this Ferrari, it's great. And then, when someone's in need, the first thing to go is the Ferrari, because they want to help the person in need. Whatever it is, it's about sharing, it's about giving, it's about really uplifting the other person, it's about communion. And you can't have that forced on you like the communist dictates would want. You just can't. It must be birthed within you by the Holy Spirit. And so, man, all these people that want Zora Mamdani now in New York City that claim to be Christians, don't you know the basics? The basics is that heart of giving, the heart of sharing, the heart of communion comes from the Holy Spirit. It comes from the inside. It doesn't get, placed over you from top down. In fact, that's going to destroy you, because the heart still hasn't changed. And so I don't think people know what the role of government is, what the role of, let's say, a regular citizen in the community is. And so we've gotten all that mixed up. It's because of desire. I'm telling you, all that stuff is mixed up because of desire. We don't know what to desire. We don't know how to desire. We don't know what to do with our desires. And yet the answer is right there in the Bible, just staring us right in the face. Whatever is good, whatever is true, whatever is beautiful, think about these things and do it just like I did it. Imitate me. And so we should look at Paul and what he said to Timothy. We should especially look at Jesus and how we are to ultimately imitate Jesus Christ in our pursuit of godliness over all things, but in our pursuit of the truth of what is good and what is beautiful.
You know what's really hard, though? I think it's really hard for a lot of people to not judge people for having certain things. I think that's a difficulty that a lot of young people may have.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because you've grown up in this envious, covetous generation. You're like, how dare the rich be rich? If you really are a Christian, then you know that their time is coming if they are evil, if they are unjust, if they have been abusing people, taking advantage of people, oppressing people, right? God is just. And so he will bring justice down upon them. In the meantime, you have to watch out for yourself. You have to watch out that this enviousness, this covetousness doesn't take control over you, that all you can see now is everything through this eye of envy and greed. And you're like, I should be the one. We should have, we should have this money and we should distribute it the way, what? How should we distribute it?
Right.
Fairly. What does that mean? Fairly means the way you think is fair.
Yeah.
Not the way I think is fair, because you ask, are you going to ask me what I think is fair? Are you going to let me distribute all the goods and materials the way I think is fair? No way.
Right.
You're going to distribute the way you think is fair. And so that's not how things work, man. And so those are things that we need to watch out for. If you are unsatisfied because you don't feel like you're rich enough, that you don't have enough money, I just need this to survive. I can't even survive. I'm not sure how you're listening to this podcast, but I'm sure you're listening to it on your iPhone or,
in your Ferrari.
If it's in your Ferrari, then kudos. But my point is, in the end, I think people look too quickly to the outside and blame the outside. But, go back to the Puritans like we talked about. We need to look on the inside, because the more you look on the outside, the more you're going to destroy yourself. You need to really look at what the Puritans were saying. People, like, we read Burroughs and what was that? The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment, right?
Yeah.
And then so he would say things like, we get what we want not by adding to what we have, but by subtracting desires. And so those are things like, that's a good discipline thing to go over. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. How do I now you're telling me it's about the heart. So what does the heart say? The heart will tell you, subtract some of those desires,
Yeah.
I don't think you need 1,200 pairs of shoes. I think everyone would agree for the most part. But I would go further. I don't think you need 20 pairs of shoes. I got some people right there. Honestly, I think I got some people, because I don't think you need 20 pairs of shoes. And so what do you need then? What do you need? And so do you need to buy this new pair of shoes? Or can you wear this one until it, wears out? Whatever it is. And so those are things that we need to continue to think about. And that's just from Burroughs. You look at Watson, he says something similar. It's not about raising your estate, but bringing your heart low. Mm-hmm. And so can you be satisfied with less? And I think I can be, because it's not about getting the most precious and the highest quality omakase, but it's just about eating like, I don't know, a tuna fish sandwich with my brother.
With mayo.
I'm gonna share it with Sam, and I'm gonna really enjoy that time. That's going to be better. And so it's not about raising your estate, but it's about lowering your heart. And that's Watson. That's a beautiful statement. We talk about Burroughs, about not adding to what you have, but subtracting from your desires. Owen would also write, be killing sin, or it will be killing you. Those are all famous quotes that we should know. And so it's about understanding how temporal the things in this world are. And if you give more weight than you should on the temporal things, then you are in for a lot of pain.
Do you think, and I think the reason why I ask this is because this is such a hush-hush question, but I think people think this all the time, but it's just super hush-hush. Do you think anyone could ever tell anybody else how to spend their money? And the reason why I say this, and I think this is a big question, even in the whole covetousness topic, because it's like, well, if I had that money, I wouldn't be spending it that way. That's really at the root of that, like, materialistic covetousness, jealousy, right? I wouldn't spend it that way. If this person has this much money, they should be doing it like this. Is there ever a space or a time that someone, a brother or sister, can say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Maybe you shouldn't be spending money like this. Is there ever a time where someone can tell someone else how to spend their money?
Perhaps. I believe your wife could to you.
I mean, she does.
Yeah, so I think that's fine.
Well, it's our money, so she's.
But I do believe that you could probably talk to a brother or sister about their heart. If it's idolatrous, then you should definitely address it, right? If they're worrying about the world too much, then you could definitely address that. If you think that people are just longing for it. But I also see the other side where, we had Judas Iscariot go, how dare she break the alabaster jar on Jesus' feet when we could have sold it for 300 denarii
Yeah.
and helped the poor. And then John would add in, he didn't say this because he really cared about the poor. He said it so that he could help himself. And so a lot of times when we say, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, it's for your own self-righteousness. So you got to watch out for that. So when you speak, don't speak from your self-righteous heart or that kind of attitude, but speak because you genuinely care. And the person receiving it, they should know you, and hopefully they'll see, oh, it's because of this person's genuine care for me. That's why he's saying that. Oh, that's why Sam told me maybe I shouldn't buy this, the PS6, because I have everything else. Maybe I could forego one gaming system. Because now I have 2 kids and I should think about other things and not be so materialistic.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I hope that our church can grow in, to be honest. So yeah, there could be times, there will be times even, but I think the main thing is if you're going to speak to somebody, it should definitely be to address the heart rather than that specific line item or that one task. Oh, you shouldn't spend $549 on this gaming system. You should wait for a sale. I don't know, whatever it
Black
is.
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's something to think about.
Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. I think that's really helpful for us because people don't think about it this way. People just think about it as that person shouldn't be spending their money how they should be how they're spending it, or the other side, I should spend my money however I want to spend it because I made it. And I think we don't really think about maybe the intention or the heart behind even how we spend our hard-earned money. And so I think that's a helpful thing for us to talk about and consider.
Yeah, I hope that maybe I could reiterate that point. When we look at others, we shouldn't look at others as if we were better and
Like, I'll be a better student than that person.
Yeah, we put ourselves in that seat of judgment.
Yeah.
I think that is not judge, but we put ourselves in the seat of judgment when we do that. So we think we're a judge because we're so much more wiser. We should be the arbiter of their money and their goods. I don't think so. I honestly don't. I can't picture the servants with the 5 talents and the 2 talents going to each other. It's like, you should spend this better this way.
Yeah.
With that kind of envious attitude. In fact, if anything, they would have said, here's an opportunity that only you can do. Why don't you try that? You would look out for the other. You would want the best for the other. And if the best means this person should make a good amount of money, then I would want this person to make a lot of money. But I wouldn't want them to make it with ill-gotten means, right? And so if they're like, Pastor Eugene, I would love to, increase my wealth, and I found a way, and it's to insider trade. Can I do that?
Wait, isn't that's a bad thing?
That's a legal thing, right?
Yeah.
I
need
so I have some information
Bad
on
one.
insider trading. I could make millions of dollars, but if I could give 10% to the church. Isn't that great? You could finally fill in the gap in the budget that you have. And I would say, no, I don't think that's a good thing. It's like, how dare you judge
Would you
me?
say keep your dirty money? Is that what you're saying?
What if they go, how dare you judge me?
Yeah.
It's my money. It's how I want it. That kind of thing. No, there is a good line, but you want the best for the person, and obviously the best for the person isn't getting ill-gotten gain.
Yeah.
And so the best is if they were to work for it, to build their portfolio or their skill set or whatever it is, so that they can continue to increase in their, money, paycheck, revenue, whatever it is.
I think that's really helpful. So thank you for that. We're going to move on to current events. And this is a response to our current event from last week, which I thought was really interesting. And the question is, we talked about IUDs. What about every other method of contraceptive, whether it be vasectomy, tubal ligation, condoms, whatever it may be? Because ultimately you're restricting fertilization, right? And I do have to say, even with this question, that there is a difference between abortifacients and restricting fertilization. There is a difference there. But if the command is to be fruitful and multiply, it's a legit question. Is any type of contraception not good then if the command is to be fruitful and multiply?
Some people think so.
The Roman Catholic Church thinks so.
Yeah, we don't.
So then where do you draw the line? I mean, okay, abortifacient, bad, I get it. But then other types of, contraceptives, where do we draw the line?
I think we should have defined what an abortifacient is. I think we should have thinking back, we should have went a little slower, which is totally fine, because abortifacients are defined differently depending on where you are. So we are defining it from the pro-life stance, yes? But there is a Planned Parenthood way of defining it. And Planned Parenthood's way of defining it is what a large portion, I dare say majority of the population, believe is the medical definition of what an abortifacient is. Okay. And so, abortifacient, when we're defining it, it means abortion. Okay?
Okay.
So, what is abortion? Abortion is, we believe that when a sperm and egg come together, it's called fertilization. When fertilization happens, if you do anything to get rid of that fertilization or even prevent that fertilized, now new being from implanting in the uterus, which is what we were talking about before, that is called an abortifacient, because that you're effectively aborting a child or aborting a fertilized egg,
whether you know it or not.
Right. And so there are different types of IUDs. There are some older style IUDs. There are newer types of IUDs. And so we were getting into the IUDs, right? There are copper IUDs. There are hormonal IUDs. And so IUDs used to be this thing where you put it inside, the woman puts it inside her, and it's called copper IUDs because it kills the sperm. So it prevents...
Spermicide.
Yeah, it has spermicide, so it prevents fertilization.
Yep.
That's the point. And so because it prevents fertilization, that's a contraception. But the newer hormonal IUDs, what they do is it thickens the mucus, like we talked about. It thins the uterine line. And what that does is even if the sperm and egg the egg was fertilized, it can't attach itself to the uterine wall because you've changed the hormones in a woman's body so that baby gets flushed out.
So the reason why I even brought it up last week was because whether it's copper or hormonal, it stops, or the intent is to stop the fertilization, but the side effect is if it, for some whatever reason, it still fertilizes, it restricts it from attaching to the uterine wall, but not all websites actually advertise that, which is why I wanted to bring it up as a PSA.
Even copper and even hormonal IUDs.
Right, so people don't know.
They actually, so fertilization can happen. And what it will do is it will prevent the fertilized egg from attaching to the uterine wall, which is why it is now an abortifacient.
Right.
The confusing part is Planned Parenthood and other so-called medical agencies will not call it an abortifacient.
No.
Because you're not actually killing the egg. But you are killing the egg. You're flushing it out of your body.
Right.
So it can't survive.
Right.
And so you are killing. So that's why pro-lifers will say that these kinds of quote-unquote contraceptives are actually all abortifacients. Mm-hmm. And you have to be careful in your usage of them. And this is why I said what I said about John Piper, saying that he said it very somberly, saying he had used some contraceptives not knowing what it would do.
Right.
And so he was very repentant about it. And because in the end, if you believe that fertilization is the conception of life and you got rid of it, even if it's by mistake, you still got rid of a life. And so this is something that we need to not only be aware of, but take great care
Yeah.
in our planning of our families, right? And so that's something to keep in mind. I'm not sure if any IUDs now can be considered not an abortifacient because of what we have found that it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think hormonal ones are way worse, obviously, but those when you alter the endometrium, the lining, and you're saying, okay, I'm not going to let it stick. How can you say like, oh, because I'm not letting it stick, that's not an abortifacient? That doesn't make any sense because in the end, it's about what you're doing to the fertilized egg.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's what we're trying to get at.
Right. So for this question, though, we're not talking about abortifacients. We understand why that is wrong biblically. What about every other type of contraceptive? Because you are technically still not fulfilling the command to be fruitful and multiply by controlling when you are fruitful and multiply, right? So is every other type of contraception also incorrect or also wrong and sinful?
I think I alluded to it, but I think the answer is it can be. It can be, but not definitely. I think there are times where you should plan. I think there are times when, let's say the mom or the potential mom is very sick and she needs to get healthier, and you just want to do. There are a lot of scenarios that I could give out where you probably want to plan at certain points. But what's not a good excuse is I just want to have fun. I want to live my life before I have a kid because once I have a kid, everything's going to revolve around the kid. I think that's a very poor excuse for you. For you to use contraceptives. And I've said this, and you could disagree all you want, but you got to give me a better reason than I want to live my life the way I want to. And I think it's important that my wife or my husband and we really have a solid marriage before we have kids. I think that's a very poor excuse. I don't think you'll have a solid marriage just by saying that I think I'm gonna wait 3 years. That doesn't happen. It's the same thing with like I think I'm gonna wait till I'm like really settled in my career before I get married. That's why so many people didn't get married, and so I think these are poor excuses. This is what is detrimental to society. I think you should have kids as soon as you can, but if you can't for whatever reason, you should prayerfully go through that time. And the contraceptives that you should use very carefully because they could be abortifacients. And so we don't want anybody willingly or unwillingly to abort their child.
Right.
And so that's the warning we want to give out there. And now your statement on contraceptions is we need to go first from the understanding that conception is a good thing. Contraception then is going against conception, and there needs to be a really good reason for you to have contraception. And so if you want to have a good reason, there could be talk it over with your spouse, pray to God, and if you need pastor oversight, come talk to me, ask me about that, and I could always give you my thoughts. But more importantly, I would be praying for you. And so I hope that's the case.
So is it always contextual? Is there no biblical grounds for when you should be using versus when you shouldn't be using? Is it always context? Because I think people can always think, well, I'm really not financially stable. I think that's one of the biggest reasons I've heard. I'm not really financially stable. We're unable to afford this right now.
What if we debunk that? What if you thought that?
It has been debunked,
right.
I think.
And so all your reasonings, if they're debunked, are you going to change your mind? Because maybe the heart really is the issue. Maybe it wasn't the financial situation. It's your anxiety that's getting to you. When you think about finances, you're so anxious. So it's a heart issue more than it really is about simply finances. I get it. If you don't have a job and you're living out on the streets, don't have babies. I get that. That's a good thing. I'll agree with you there, and we'll try to get you into a home, try to get you a job and things like that if you're in the church. I get that. But, if you have a home, you have a roof over your heads, maybe you're kind of barely making ends meet, and you got to, tighten your belt a little bit more. It's like, I don't know how much I can tighten it and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But, statistics have shown that people who get married and then have kids, their income increases on average. So people who get married, their income grows. When people go, I don't want to get married until my income grows, well, statistics show the opposite. So science is showing you the opposite. Same thing with children. People who have children tend to make more money over time. And so statistics and science is showing you the opposite. Why do you keep on holding on to these, not just outdated, but wrong views? Then perhaps it is a heart issue. I would say, do your best to have children and, have as many as God would allow and that you can handle. And it's up to the wisdom that God gives you. Some couples will have a really hard time having children. It's a blessing that they have one or two.
Oh yeah,
and some couples easily will have like 9 or 10. Crazy, because I wanted to answer this before you ask the next question.
Yeah.
So conscience has a lot to do with it, not context. Conscience. So if your conscience allows, then have as many children or as little children as your conscience allows. So some people don't believe in any kind of contraception. That's their conscience. So they'll just have children until she can't have children anymore. And other people are like, this is way too hard. We could barely make it. I don't know if I could do it. I want to do some kind of family planning. And so their conscience won't let them have more children. Does that make sense? So go with your conscience.
But it almost seems like then you're saying that your conscience is the deciding factor for not obeying the command to be fruitful and multiply.
No, I don't think so. I think if you are saying obeying the commandment to be fruitful and multiply means to have as many kids as physically possible,
like to your to the extent that you physically can.
Yeah, that would be a big mistake. I think that would be a huge mistake to think that. Noah and his wife had 3 sons, no daughters that we knew. And back then, people could have had like 50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They lived a very, very long time.
They needed to repopulate
I
the earth
believe
too,
that they probably used some form of contraception then. Because, I could be wrong, but the dude lived till he was like, 700 or something, right? And so, what are you going to do during that time? I just don't think that having as many kids as physically possible, that's the definition or that's the mandate that God gave us. You're supposed to have as many kids as possible, as I believe I wanted to add, as your conscience will allow, or you will have, the capacity for.
I see.
So I think in your, let's go back to certain other things. Like, let's say, in the Yang family household, you decided, you know what, we want to have 4 kids because I think that's a good number and that we could raise them well. I'm pretty confident that we could do well. That's great. Have 4 kids, But if someone comes up to you is like, I think you're sinning because you're not, I think you could have 16 kids. Like your wife, she's beastly. She could have 16 kids. She's not living up to her potential.
You can run a 7v7 flag football tournament. Wow, that's crazy.
I think that's a little foolhardy. That's what I'm saying. I think that's a little foolhardy. I get it that our generation has changed because from the boomers, we started having only 2 kids, which is the destruction of society. I think just if we're just strictly speaking how to propagate society, you need to have more than 2 kids. Two would be the minimum. That's replacement, right? But to have a society that grows, you need more than 2. And so if you have 2 or more, that's great. If you have 1, but you couldn't do any more, that's also great. That's up to God giving you that. But if you're like one of those people, if I have 1 kid, I just want 1 designer baby, and I can really, really spoil this kid. I don't want any other kid because that's going to impinge on my lifestyle. I think that should kind of nick your conscience a little bit. I think that is an issue. I think you've been given into materialism, into envy, into covetousness, and I think that is a bad thing. So there's that. So we always have the conscience I'm talking about is if we set a number or if we say as many as you can, those things can be actually quite suffocating. I think the freedom that we have, we should say this should be to the glory of God, which means I give my will to God, right? And so if you're just saying, I want to do this because I want to have a designer baby, I think that's wrong. So I'll say right there, I think people who have one kid because they just want one designer baby.
What's a
that's
designer
wrong.
baby?
It's like a Gucci bag that you carry around.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see. Okay. I think that's really helpful. I think people, maybe they have more questions on this.
Yeah, I think I could go longer. I can go longer. We could go all over the whole Malthusian like theory getting bunked, all that stuff too.
Because I think people would even have some thoughts about like vasectomies or tubal ligation because, even with that, you're not only not allowing fertilization to happen, but you are physically, I don't want to say it. You're I was gonna say like impotent or eunuch, but it's not the case. But you're physically changing your body so that you can't have
fertilized
children.
But that's different from actually a fertilized egg. I hope
Right, yeah.
I hope you can see the difference between what we do with an actual fertilized egg and then before that preventing fertilization, because preventing fertilization happens all the time.
Yeah.
But preventing a fertilized egg from growing, that's something else. I hope that people see that.
Yeah. And again, if there's more questions on this, we could always.
Well, I have very strong feelings on vasectomies, but
can you share them? Actually, I want to hear just one.
Well, I said, I literally said this, like, the sperm got to go somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Just because you cut it off or you sear it off, it doesn't mean the sperm's like, all right, I guess I have nowhere to go. I'm just going to disappear.
Back and relax. Yeah.
It's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It's going to be in your brain or something. You're going to have a bunch of sperm in your brain. And so
I actually asked the doctor.
Yeah.
Once you get a vasectomy, because it's not restricting the production of sperm in your body, but it's restricting the sperm from leaving your body. And so what happens, right? And then the way that he explained it was perhaps he didn't know, but he was just guessing. Perhaps it's like was that negative reinforcement? No. Where it's like the cycle where if there's more of it, your body stops producing it, right? So maybe it's something like that. But then that means your body stops producing sperm. Like, does that lower your testosterone? Is that why we have feminine men now? Is that what it is?
No. Obviously, this is conjecture, but
No, all conjecture.
But the doctors don't know because they don't know what happens to the sperm in the body. But I'm telling you, it goes somewhere. It goes somewhere. It could be going to your bloodstream. It could be going somewhere. It goes somewhere because the sperm needs to be released, right? And so the body always does things to dispose. We have like antibodies. We have white blood cells. We have a system in place to dispose of things that shouldn't be there. We have a liver. We have kidneys. They all need to function. So you could just be like, it's not a big deal. You're just adding to what the liver is going to dispose of or whatever it is, right? I just think that no,
it's unnatural.
We don't know because this hasn't happened before, and you're just assuming. And you know what happens when you assume?
Snip, snap, snip, snap.
Yeah.
Is, I think, the answer.
Yeah, you become racist. That's what happens. Seriously, you become racist when you assume.
No, it's a very interesting topic, I think. Again, it's something that I guess you could talk about for a long time. I don't really have that much to talk about for vasectomies, but to be honest with you.
It's because people my age.
Yeah.
They get vasectomies.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting topic. But is there anything like a red flag as from a Christian moral standpoint?
For a vasectomy?
Yeah. It's your heart thing. It's your heart condition, right? Intent, heart, that kind of thing too.
Yeah. I always think that the Christian conscience is what is key here. And so we grow in our Christian conscience, and we should continue to follow the dictates of the Word of God. But remember, the Word of God doesn't say you have to always step out the door with your left or right foot. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. But you have to step out the door with either your left or right foot. Which one are you going to do? Right? And that comes from the wisdom that the Word of God gives us. And the wisdom that the Word of God gives us is superior than to the little like left or right or vasectomy, no vasectomy, contraception, no contraception, all that stuff. The Word of God is superior to that. I think we need to apply ourselves to the Word of God. And you see how the conscience affects us. When we start living it out, we actually become more sanctified in our walk.
Yeah.
So me telling you whether to do this or not, if it doesn't affect your sanctification, then it becomes bunk too. It's all garbage. It's out the door. Because the point of all this is for your sanctification to increase, for you to listen to your conscience more, not whether, you eat or drink or do this or that. Because whether you eat or drink or do this or that, our ultimate thing should be, if it is in the Lord's will, we'll do that.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we should do.
Yeah. I think that's helpful for us to consider. Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. We have a fast Q&A. Are you okay for a fast Q&A?
Sure. Do you have a little thing for the Q&A?
We do. I lied, actually. This is not a fast Q&A.
We need a beat.
What you got in the bag? What you got in the bag?
What you got in the bag?
So the question of the day today is, Pastor Eugene, you said in your sermon that Christians can take a loss at times for the sake of loving the church. What does that even look like? What do you mean by that, taking a loss for the sake of the church? How can we do that today in our context?
Yeah, I think taking a loss is something that you will feel is unjust. It's not good. How many times do I have to do this? That kind of thing. And I do believe that it has a lot to do with what Peter asked Jesus. How many times do I forgive my neighbor? 7 times? And he was trying to be gracious. And then Jesus is 70 times 7. And so how much do we take a loss? I think as much as we can. As much as, we are able. And so we continue to take the loss. And then, what if they take advantage of you? What if they're sinning against you? All these things are going to definitely come up in your mind. And obviously, if it's a sin, then you need to point it out. But you still don't have to, let's say, for instance, ask for it back. I don't know if that makes sense. So, let's say someone hits your Tesla and, you're like, you know what, brother? It's all good. I could always fix this Tesla up. And, we can let bygones be bygones. And then the next time they hit your Tesla again, but this time they don't even say sorry. They just hit your Tesla and assume that you're going to forgive them. And so you're like, wait, what's going on here, right? So you are going to take the loss, but it doesn't mean that you don't point out the sin. So you could say, brother, this is a wrong that you've done to me. We should address that. That doesn't mean you're not taking the loss. You're still taking the loss, meaning your car still hit, and then you might still pay for it. So this other person who's not able to pay has to pay. And so those are things that can actually happen in church. I think a lot of times we get angrier at the other person for far less. Things like, I can't believe this guy's first on the line again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For food. Like, take the loss, bro. Just wait in the back of the line. This guy's always first on line. I hate him. It's like, well, that's an issue. But if you think, oh, this person's sinning by always being inconsiderate to others, then you should take it up with him. But I think most people just kind of like be like, that's not a big enough deal to take it up with them. So they'll just resent them on the side. I think that's a bad thing. Take the loss, get over it, move on, and continue to bless others. If there are times when you need to give up your seat to somebody or give up your food for somebody else, I think those are things that you ought to do, and that's to your great benefit, in my opinion. Speaking of food, there are people who stand on line first. There are people who get seconds before other people have gotten there first all the time. And then those are things that we need to slowly educate and correct over time. I get it. But one encouraging note is that many times I've seen the people that are actually doing the serving, the fellowship team, not even get there first. They wouldn't get their food.
They actually don't.
They don't. And then they're totally fine with it or they'll eat whatever's like the scraps that are left over. They'll just like mix rice with the sauce or something, and there's no meat or vegetables, and they'll just eat that. I think they have a great reward because that they're taking a loss. And so those are things that we also ought to watch out for. If you know this now, then before you get your seconds, maybe you go to the fellowship team and go, "Oh, did you get your Did you get your first even? Do you have some food on the side? Because this is my seconds. I don't need it." And so those are things that we ought to consider. And who knows? Maybe one day there will be a lot of food, but maybe one day there won't be enough. And what are you going to do when there's not enough? Are you going to make sure that you get your own, may feed your own family first, and make sure your kid gets food because otherwise he or she's going to be so hangry you can't deal with it? Or will you say, you know what, there's not enough food, guys. You know what we could do? Afterwards, I'll treat you to a double quarter pounder with cheese deluxe with Big Mac sauce.
You can't
and
miss the Mac sauce.
Your kid is like, yay, right? Because like Happy Meals suck. But anyway,
You can't mobile order Mac sauce, by the way. I don't know who needs to hear that, but
What?
if it's you, you need to hear that. You can't order Mac sauce on the mobile app. You have to go in person. I don't know who needs to hear it, but you're welcome. Whoever heard this.
Yeah, you could order it and then from the window say add Mac sauce to my order.
Yeah, so you have to go in person. Like you can't get it delivered.
Either way, you have to. Yeah, okay.
you have to speak to a person because they won't do that for you for free.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there are instances of people taking the loss already in our church. And
Yeah.
it's a part of our sanctification. I hope people see that. Some people are like, I've been taking loss so much, no one notices, and I'm just getting frustrated. Well, I think to a degree, everybody takes a loss that no one else will notice. But we know that God sees all. And so we find solace and comfort in that. But sometimes it is a sin issue, so use your discernment. And if someone's sinning against you, use Matthew 18 so that person stops. But yeah, about how to get restitution, those are things that you can discuss with the elders if that's the case. If, like I said, the car case. If the guy hit your car for the second time and you don't want to take him to court, you could take it to the elder.
Right.
That kind of thing. And the church leadership can decide what's going to happen. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, and hopefully it helps us continue to serve our church and serve our God faithfully. Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. And we thank you for listening, right?
I do. We do thank you.
We do.
Yeah.
I do thank you. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church Podcast. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith. Peace.